All right, good morning. Oh, wow, it does work. Okay, technology. Good morning. I'm incredibly excited to be here. Now, I have been told that a lot of times I'm not a morning person. I'm just always like that. So I've told I need to always tone myself down a little bit this early in the morning because not everybody can handle Reza this early. So I will do my best not to blow out eardrums if I go a little over. I did want to take a brief moment to recognize a few folks that are here in the audience. This meeting so far has been awesome, but we really need to recognize Dr. Rick Capitan and his entire advisory group that are here. I can tell you, as somebody that has the privilege of lecturing around the world, this concept of interdisciplinary care is absolutely the future of medicine and dentistry, but it doesn't happen overnight. And we know the secret that so many of the issues that our adults are dealing with really start with kids. So it's groups like this that make it important for us to be able to collaborate. So just a round of applause to Rick and the entire group. If you looked at the schedule, and I've been seeing the schedule change, there's a lot of stuff that is jam-packed today. But I will encourage you to recognize the folks that are sitting in the room with us around, because these sponsors are what allow us to be in such a nice facility and have so many great things that we get to experience. So during some of the breaks, or just have an opportunity to talk to them, they're here for us. A special shout out to Fireside. I don't know who's in the back. Okay, just to Bart. In full disclosure, I do not work for Fireside. I'm actually a paying member. I just selfishly appreciate groups that are out there for those of us that are still in private practice pediatric dentistry and are there to support us. So I'm always happy to talk about them or anything that I do in the practice. I am an open book, so I am here for you all day. So if you have any questions, please feel free. Now, as for me, I was born in Tehran, Iran. Now, the Iran that I was from is not the one that you see depicted on the TV and the internet today. In the early 1970s, the culture and beauty of Iran was honestly not that much different than what we have in the States. Imagine the early 1970s, and the Iran that I was from was pretty much the same. I still remember my dad kind of strutting around in his bell-bottom jeans and his collared shirts, all John Travolta style, and you older folks will explain that to you. And my mom with her, feathered hair. The country I grew up in was amazing, but it was the people that made it so special. You see, the Persian culture is a lot about connection, and it made my childhood pretty awesome. I grew up in the bustling capital of Tehran, surrounded by family and friends. Now, I don't remember everything about my childhood, but what I do remember being in Iran was very reminiscent of my college days. Lots of parties and celebrations. Now, if you've ever met a Persian, you know that we like to have a good time. Now, it could be your 80-year-old grandmother who's just cooked enough food to feed an army and making sure you have your 7th helping, or one of a dozen cousins that lived an arm's length away. Every weekend was a cause for celebration, and somebody, somewhere, was having a party. But I'll warn you, Persian parties are just different. Okay, party invite says come at 6, but don't you dare show up until at least 8:30, and even then, you're probably one of the early ones. You know that saying, if you're on time, you're late. Yeah, not in Iran. Dinner's probably not even served until around 10, and that's just when the party's getting started. I'll always remember the sounds of laughter and jubilation to the wee hours of the day. Culture, community, connection. When I was around 5 years old, my siblings and family and I were vacationing in the United States. Now, I was just telling you how great my life in Iran was, but what I didn't realize as a little kid was that it was actually a pretty tumultuous time. And while we're visiting extended family in the States, the Iranian Revolution was taking place. Turns out that our short vacation turned into an extended one. For life. Now, I was a little kid who didn't really understand the gravity of the situation, but my parents were about to completely transform their lives. And mine. As back in Iran, we were living it up as upper-class citizens with a rich history. And literally, overnight, we were in a new place, away from our home, all of our family and friends, and everything that we knew. But that Persian connection was real. Because I don't think my parents thought it was going to be forever, so being protective of us, they kind of explained it as if we were going on an adventure. And what kid doesn't like an adventure? Well, at that point, we did what any good Iranian does when they come to the States, and we moved to LA. Los Angeles, the city of angels, and about 500,000 Persians. And just like back in Iran, that Persian culture was real. Even without the benefits of the internet and social media, we were able to surround ourselves with other Iranians. And for a kid that was new to the country, honestly, it made the transition pretty easy. That is until I started school. You see, I had one major disadvantage starting school. Man aslan nemitunestam Englishi harf bezanem. Yeah, I didn't speak any English. Honestly, to this day, I have no idea how I was even allowed to start school. But my parents had their own big issues going on, and to them, starting school without speaking the language just wasn't that big of a deal. In their words, Ed, as a Jew, just go. It's a school. It'll be fine. It's an adventure. Now, like most of you, I don't remember everything about my childhood. But I distinctly remember the first day of kindergarten. I can remember this huge oval rug right in the middle of this classroom. The classroom seemed ginormous and spread out as far as the eyes could see. I remember being in a circle of other little kids around my size from different walks of life. But I remember looking around and thinking that none of them looked quite like me. I was a little bit darker than most of the other kids and definitely a lot hairier. Pretty sure I was the only kindergartner with a mustache. Believe it or not, most of the hair was on the top half of my body, not dispersed throughout it is like it is now. The tall woman comes to the front of the classroom and begins to speak. And I just hear gibberish. I mean, I can see her mouth moving. I can see the words coming out, but to me, it just sounds like wah, wah, wah. Wah, 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 wah. Nothing. Things get even stranger when randomly kids would stand up, hit each other on the head, and run around in circles. Duck, duck, goose can be a very complicated game if you don't speak the language and understand the rules. Well, it doesn't take long before somebody decides to hit the new kid on the head and yell, goose! Yeah, nothing. I have no idea what's going on because in my language of Farsi, the word goose means to fart. I'm very confused. I don't know what to do. But then another kid in the classroom in my language yells, bodo, which translates to run. I immediately stand up. I run around the room like a madman as fast as I can, eventually catching up to the little girl that hit me on the head and proceed to shove her to the ground. But in my defense, I blame that on not knowing the rules. But it turns out there was another Iranian kid in the class. And for the next few months, he was my personal translator. But the thing is, he didn't have to help me. I mean, the teacher didn't make him do it. Some school administrator didn't set it up ahead of time. I don't know, maybe he just wanted the game to continue. Or maybe he heard about my cat-like reflexes and wanted to see for himself. Or maybe, just maybe, it inherently made him feel good to help. The generous act of this little boy changed everything. Now, I don't know what happened next, if I told my parents or he told his, but somehow we're at his house. And for the next 2 years, our families became incredibly close and intertwined until we eventually moved away. Connection. But I started to think about why was it that this little boy chose to make a connection. A 2023 study of 285 4 and 5-year-olds showed the kids are naturally pro-social and compassionate. Well, this confirmed what researchers at Yale had found, that kids, they're naturally helpful. Well, that's great. It's great the kids are helpful. But what happens to those happy-go-lucky kids when they become adults? So I started researching how adults feel this day and age. and immediately wanted to go back to reading about happy-go-lucky 4 or 5-year-olds. Turns out those happy kids, they don't become happy adults. In fact, 72% of adults report feeling stressed about money. 50% of adults report that they're dissatisfied with their work. 1 out of 5 adults in the United States suffers from a mental health disorder, yet nearly 60% don't receive any treatment. 1 out of 3 adults over the age of 40 report feeling lonely. But if we think about the lessons that we learned as a kid, we can relate it back to one thing: connection. Now, we've all faced challenges. If you think about the challenges in your life, the problem is that we're always hearing these stories about how people overcome their challenges all by themselves. And then they tell you that you can too, with a little motivation and determination. Heck, we've probably fantasized about some of our own accomplishments. And in our minds, we did it all by ourselves. But if we're really being honest, there was probably someone somewhere that helped along the journey. Maybe it was the personal trainer that started you on your fitness journey, or a teacher, or a tutor that helped you with a class, or a parent or a friend that gave you a timely piece of advice. Or for me, a group of knucklehead dental students that made my dental school experience an adventure. 1998. An auditorium filled with 100 dental students. You can feel the nerves, and it's nerves and confidence that kind of filled the air. We'd all heard about how cutthroat dental school can be. And I'm sitting next to this guy, and we decided to start a conversation. And he asks me what I did over the summer. And I proudly tell him that I worked in a dental office. I think that's going to give me an edge over the competition. I asked him what he did over the summer, and he simply replied, I read the books. What? I looked at him and I said, what? Was there some kind of summer reading list that I missed? This is back before the days of email and the internet. And he simply responded with, oh, no, there was no reading list. I read the textbooks. Who does that? Now, I don't know how you felt in dental school, but immediately I felt I do not belong. My dream of becoming a dentist was over before it started. And honestly, man, I was scared. Well, that night, some of the upperclassmen were having a party for all of us newbies. And I had a choice. Do I stay home in my apartment and start studying, or do I go to the party? Well, I did what any responsible 23-year-old would do in that situation, and I went to the party. I mean, it's my first week at dental school. We don't have classes. I'm in South Florida, and I already told you about Persians and parties. But it turns out it was the best decision that I can make. Because after a beer, or two, I started actually asking the other students if they also read the textbooks. And they looked at me like I had 3 heads. It turns out I just happened to be sitting next to the one weird kid in dental school. Nobody read the textbooks, but I wouldn't know that unless we started talking. The more we talked and connected, the more we realized that we had so much in common, and so many of us shared the same fears. But it was about connection. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that dental school was all rainbows and sunshine, because it wasn't. It definitely had its challenges. But I can also sit here and tell you story after story about how amazing my classmates were. Because the challenges that we face become the memories that we fondly remember later. But yes, it was difficult. But to me, I believe that connection is key. And sometimes what you're searching for, you need to provide that for somebody else. Now, if you think about your educational journey, you probably had a favorite teacher or a faculty member that you liked. For me, easily, Dr. Marshall Berger. I mean, this guy was larger than life, except he was about 5'0" and probably rounder than he was tall. Imagine Danny DeVito coat, but with a mustache and really long hair. The guy had a private practice, and he retired, and he was just always a ball of energy. And from day one of dental school, he would call us doctor. Just really weird, because we had a long way to go before we became doctors. But the way Dr. Berger would tell it, one of these days you're going to be my colleague, and he wanted us to feel respected from day one. Now, there were definitely faculty members that liked to treat us the way that they were treated, and they took every opportunity to break us down. Dr. Berger took those opportunities to build us up. The thing with Dr. Berger was he didn't yell at you. If we turned in a wax up or a typing out restoration that wasn't that great, he wouldn't look at it, tell you it's garbage, and throw it on the floor. True story. He'd look at it and say, this is the best you can do. For now. He was tough on you when you needed it, but he was compassionate the rest of the time. Now, fast forward 5 years, and I'm working for a corporate dental group in South Florida. Now, I don't have the horror stories that a lot of people do about corporate dentistry. Honestly, it was fine. I mean, the location was fine. The equipment was fine. The patients were fine. The team members were fine. But something wasn't fine. I mean, obviously I have a lot of energy and I had a lot of suggestions for things that we could do to make things better, but it seemed that the corporate group really just wanted fine. All right, maybe I was a little overly anxious, new young dentist. Or maybe I actually had something important to say. Didn't matter. I put a smile on my face, and day after day I showed up to work. Well, one day, Dr. Berger shows up in the office. Turns out that after his time at the dental school, this company had hired him to do some chart reviews and work with their younger general dentists. Man, I was excited to see him, but we had a couple pleasantries. I get to work seeing the kids. He gets to work reviewing charts. Well, during one of the breaks, I walk to the back, and before I even have a chance to settle in, Dr. Berger looks at me and says, "You gotta get the F out of here, kid." Except he used the big boy word. "He can't be here." I look at him and I say, "Dr. Berger, I don't think we should be having this conversation considering this company pays both of our salaries." And at that moment, I remember the conversation we had 20 years ago like it was yesterday. He looked at me and he said, "You dynamite, kid. This ain't for you. You could do more for your patients, more for yourself and your profession. This ain't it. You gotta get out of here." Now, I'm not the type of person that's generally at a loss for words, but I didn't know what to say. Because the truth was, he was right. And while every day I put a smile on my face and I went to work, I wasn't happy there. I had no say in the patient care. I couldn't be my true self. Dr. Berger saw that. And he knew me. But more importantly, he knew the toll that decades of just fine was going to take. And I probably still wouldn't have done anything, but Dr. Berger's always helps you take the next step. He knew where I lived, and he said, "I have a friend of mine that's building a shopping center. I want you to go check out the space." Not wanting to disappoint him, I went and I looked at it. Couldn't afford it. I'm $500,000 in debt, and this place was way too nice. But I had a friend from dental school that was in the area, and I reached out to him. And he told me about another space on the other side of the tracks. It wasn't much. I mean, it was literally a dirt floor, but it had potential. And I don't know what it was, but in that moment, I started to think about a future, a profession that was more than just fine. And it happened. Ardalan Pediatric Dentistry was born. Now, I had no idea how to run a business. I didn't know how to hire a staff. I didn't know how to pay for them. I didn't know how to get patients. I'd never heard of an office culture or a mission vision, but I knew that I had some buddies that had just done it recently and I could reach out to them. And all of this was because one man saw something in me and needed to share his experience. I sometimes think about what would have happened if Dr. Berger didn't tell me the truth? Honestly, I probably wouldn't be here right now talking to you. But he saw something in me. He says he saw a gift, and he felt the need to tell me that I needed to know. What if you see a gift in someone? Will you tell them? What if they need to know? Now, it's because of people like Dr. Berger or my original mentor, a brilliant pediatric dentist named Dr. Mark Meyer, that I have such a wonderful, positive view of our dental profession. It's because that's what I got to see firsthand through the vision that they created, and I saw it firsthand through their eyes. But there's a scary truth to our profession. I wish I could tell you that the mental health of dentists is in good hands, but it's not. According to the ADA Wellness Report, the majority of dentists are stressed and depressed. And if you're younger or female, the numbers are worse for you. When I think about this, I look at what could the answer be. And for me, connection. Connection is the key. Now I get it. You're looking and you're saying, oh, well, yeah, it's easy for you, Reza. You're just this extrovert. Well, the truth is I wasn't always an extrovert. I was a nervous kid, but I learned when it was important to use that tool. And the thing is, you can too. You need to look for an opening for a conversation. Don't think about it, jump in. Don't think about it, jump in. Here's an example. During the pandemic, I took a lot of online continuing education. A lot. And one of the courses that I took was this awesome webinar on dental photography by the brilliant Dr. Amanda C. Now, it wasn't just the pictures that were so good, it was her actual dental work. Now, I pride myself in my dentistry, but I'm telling you right now, on my best day, I couldn't recreate what I was seeing on that. It was awesome. Well, fast forward a couple years and I actually get to see Amanda at a meeting. Amanda's very intimidating. I just wanted to tell her how amazing I thought she was, but every time you see her, she dresses really nice. She walks around with this air of confidence, and she always has an entourage of people around her. But I decided to lead with a little bit of humor, and I just went up to her and I said, hey, Amanda, I just wanted to let you know that I took your photography course and it was awesome. Oh, that's so nice. I really hope you learned something. Oh, I did. I learned that I suck as a dentist. Oh, that's so nice. I'm sorry, what? And that leads to a conversation, a connection. It also leads me to take Amanda's in-person cosmetic artistry course and spend the next 6 months working my butt off to perfect my craft. But now, if I have a question or a concern, I call her. A different connection, but one that's as varied as I am. Not going to stuck with the online course and picked up a couple tidbits, but instead, I now continue to surround myself with people that are going to make me the best versions of myself. Problem is, we're constantly bombarded over the head with things that we could do to help make our lives better. Exercise, meditation, financial planning, new technologies, self-help books, work-life balance, digital detox, mindfulness, and the list goes on and on and on. But there's something missing. That secret ingredient that can make whatever we do better. Connection. Connection is the key. Now we have to find the balance. I know for a fact that I have a group of people that I can call at the drop of a dime and they're going to be there for me. But in return, they know that I'm there for them. If they need a clinical tip or word of encouragement, that's what I'm there for. And that's what I'm encouraging you to do. This is a perfect place to do it. Connect and collaborate so that you can grow. Now, I know it sounds easy and too good to be true, but is it really that hard to think that if you have a support group and you're a cheerleader for your friends and family and colleagues, that life wouldn't be better? We've already talked about some of the hardships that people are facing. Maybe it's something you're going through, but you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to struggle and be trapped. And that Persian culture and everything has taught me that we need to be there for each other. So what I want you to do is go out there and be first. Be the first to smile. Be the first to raise your hand. Be the first to give a compliment. Be the first to make a connection. Because connection is key. And the challenge that I leave with you with today is to do one thing. Today, I want you to have a conversation with one new person and exchange phone numbers. Not just a talk, not a business card, a phone number. And then send them a text. That's a connection. And if you're nervous, or you don't know if you can do it, or you don't know how to do it, connect with me. I'm here for you. I'm here to serve you. I want to see the gift that you have. And I guarantee you, if you text me, I'll text you back. Because in the end, connection is about being a cheerleader for each other and hyping each other up. Because connection is key. And one connection has the ability to change our world. I appreciate you guys. We're going to have a fantastic conference today. Thank you.